Welcome to Macfrut Academy, Macfrut's innovative digital training platform, the new service designed by the FAIR's team of experts to bring together the fruit and vegetable industry through exclusive and strategic content. The training and sharing of best practices, technical and technological innovation are the foundations of the development of the international fruit and vegetable sector. Macfrut Academy will involve fruit and vegetable professionals through video lessons all year round. It will also expand on the topics of global interest that emerged during the fair, thus strengthening the community of the event. Macfrut Academy offers a range of video lessons, with each module featuring a general overview of the subject, technical insights and expert opinions. This exclusive, high-level service is a key element in order to be competitive and successful on the market. Through this dedicated platform, you will be able to interact with our experts and the protagonists of each lesson personally. The third episode is dedicated to the Chilean cherry supply chain, which has seen a rapid development over the last decade, so much so that it has become a benchmark for the world's fruit and vegetable industry. Starting from a general overview of the production, we're going to expand on the strategies that Chile has implemented, both in terms of varietal selection and cultivation techniques. In another episode, we're going to focus on the analysis of the post-harvest stage. Without further ado, let's get started. The global cherry market has a protagonist, Chile. The South American country has gained a leading role in this sector. As for production, the investments have been so significant that Chilean cherry orchards went from 3,200 hectares in 2000 to 61,500 hectares in 2022. However, export is Chile's strength. You can find out more about the development of Chile's exports on this chart. To give you an idea, Chile's exports went from 103,000 tons during the 2014-2015 season to more than 415,000 in the 2022-2023 season. As Avium founder and technical director Carlo Tapia says, further and significant growth can be anticipated. The surface planted with cherries in Chile exceeds 70,000 hectares, with the majority being located in the O'Higgins region, the 6th region, and in the Maule region, the 7th region. The two regions combined account for about 80% of the surface planted with cherries, as well as of the production. The two regions also act as an export area, as it's where the largest number of processing plants for the export of cherries can be found. Out of the 70,000 or 72,000 hectares planted with cherries that we have in 2023, about 54 or 56,000 hectares would count as production area at this time. The trees in these cherry orchards were planted at least 4 years ago, so their volume of production is enough to be considered part of the cultivated area. In previous years and until last year, Chile exported 415,000 tons of cherries. This year, following a climatically challenging season, I reckon that around 400,000 tons will be exported this season. With regard to the evolution of the cherry orchards, I believe that a growth of about 2,000–2,500 hectares per year is foreseeable. The exponential growth of Chilean production is primarily linked to three factors: varietal selection, training systems, and post-harvest technologies. There are three main varieties of cherries grown in Chile: the Lapiens variety, with exports reaching 30 million cases of 5 kilos last year; then the Santina cherry, for which we exported 23 or 24 million cases, and ranking third is the Regina variety, with about 15 million cases worth of exports. This top three will definitely stay the same for long. Our team and I have observed that in the last 4 years, the Santina variety has been featured in over 50% of the surface of newly planted cherry orchards. The Chilean cherry industry has witnessed a fast evolution. Let's now take a look at how the production has increased so quickly. Looking at the analysis of production in Chile, the yield used to be about 6.57 tons per hectare 10 years ago and was obtained from the production area. As a result of technological developments, the standard we have reached in recent years is an average of 9 or 9.5 tons per hectare. And this goes hand in hand with continuous learning from a technical point of view. Clearly, we experts in the field have learned a lot in the last decade, and we have added varieties that are easier to grow. We have increased the area allocated to the Lapins variety. We have increased the area for Santina variety, and in the last 10 years we've also grafted the Regina variety on more efficient rootstocks and in higher density cherry orchards, which explains the reason behind the constant increase in productivity. There are primarily three types of rootstocks. The most popular is the colt rootstocks. It is a hybrid between Prunus avium and Prunus pseudocerassus that is suitable for a wide range of soils, such as soils with greater water holding capacity, heavier soils, and loam soils. Colt is also used for varieties like Lapins and Santina, but not for Reginas or varieties that are not self-fertile or that have a better fruit set. It is a highly versatile rootstock from a training system point of view, as it can range from the classic central leader to Y-shaped or KGB if you are looking to moderate tree vigor by distributing it on multiple leaders. The second type is Gisela series. In Chile, Gisela 6 and Gisela 12 are the most used, definitely for varieties that are characterized by a lower fertility or a lower fruit set, such as Regina, Cordia, and more recently Santina or Gisela 12. There are more limitations to the use of these rootstocks, which are posed by soil type, as they are not suitable for soils with a lower water holding capacity, such as lighter soils, or for clay or stony soils. The most suitable training system for the Gisela series is the central leader, perhaps with a higher density, just like the one you can see here now, which ensures the necessary vigor to withstand a high production potential. Ranking third in terms of use, yet still widely used, is the Maxima series, both Maxima 14 and 60, but mainly Maxima 14, which is slightly more versatile in terms of combinations with other varieties. Self-pollinating varieties or varieties with a higher fruit set, such as Lapins and Santina, can be grafted on the rootstock, but we also have noticed excellent results with varieties such as Regina and Cordia. What can be observed the most with Maxima 14 today are cherry orchards featuring high-density central leader systems or high-density systems in narrow wall or semi-pedestrian orchards. In terms of density, Chilean cherry orchards have approximately 1,200 trees per hectare on average. 6 or 7 years ago, it used to be about 900 trees per hectare. In the last 5 to 6 seasons, we have increased the density, and this explains why the production in Chile has also increased. We also work with higher densities, mainly using rootstocks like Gisela, which have enabled us to have up to 1,700 trees per hectare without experiencing management issues. By introducing different varieties of cherries, Chile has been able to draw up an extended production schedule. The cherry season in Chile runs from mid to late October in the Coquimbo region and lasts until the end of January, with cherries coming from the Aysén region. In addition to the main varieties of cherries that are currently grown, such as Lapins, Santina, Regina, Bing, Sweetheart and Royal Dawn, Chilean producers are investing in new cultivars to further improve their supply. The idea behind the introduction of new varieties in Chile is to provide quality cherries, preferably when the market is running short of them. In other words, at both ends of the curve. Therefore, we are always looking for early and late varieties that can be harvested earlier or much later. in order to avoid depreciation for producers. Our goal is to ensure that those timeframes are also covered thanks to the varieties of the Sweet series, the new genotypes selected by Stefano Lugli's research team at the University of Bologna, and are catered to with better quality cherries. This is why we started evaluating the varieties of the Sweet series roughly in 2015-2016 in selected areas of Chile, and then we also started evaluating them together with producers. The varieties of the Sweet series are already on the market and will be exported as of this year. But their commercial cultivation in Chile is recent and started in 2019. So we've had some time to see their behavior. We have carried out tests to monitor the post-harvest stage for the varieties of the Sweet series from the University of Bologna, and the feedback we have gathered points to quite a good harvest. We have stored Sweet Ariana cherries for a lot more than 30 days, close to 2 months. This variety has an excellent Brix and an excellent size, just like Sweet Gabriel and Sweet Lawrence cherries. They are very vigorous varieties, so here in Chile we need to opt for a bi-axis training system in case we are using or have to use more vigorous rootstocks due to the soil type. If that is not the case, slightly weaker rootstocks such as Maxima 14 or Gisela 12 are recommended, but it always depends on the characteristics of the soil and the climate zone you are located. So far, our evaluations on the varieties of the Sweet series have yielded good results, and feedback from producers is positive. The results are great in terms of productivity and quality, as well as sugar levels and firmness, which is greater in Chile than what we have seen in Italy or in Spain. As for the requirement for cold temperatures, we have noticed that, for instance, the need that the Sweet Ariana and Sweet Lawrence varieties have is very similar to that of the Santina variety. They need a warm climate to ripen, so when the spring is cold, as has been the case for this season and the previous one, they ripen with some difficulty. On the other hand, during the test we carried out in Ovalle, we understood that the Sweet Gabriel variety has a lower requirement for cold temperatures. Therefore, the harvest takes place ahead of time compared to what is recommended in the official description of the variety. It is done at least a couple of weeks earlier than what it is considered to be the date for that variety in particular, which gives excellent results in areas where the temperatures are higher. As a consequence, the buds of this variety develop very well in Ovalle. Yesterday we spent the day in the cherry orchards of the Aconcagua Valley in the 5th region, and this variety was already ready to be harvested. It was harvested 2 weeks ago in Ovalle, so it looks very promising for locations where colder temperatures are not the norm. As Lorena Pinto has just mentioned, the cherries of the Sweet series have been developed by the University of Bologna. They are sweet, larger sized cherries with a high level of acidity that enhances the aroma, and are of a bright red uniform color. In order to get these characteristics, the university researchers started by local varieties, the famous Duroni di Vignola. These cultivars are native to the Emilia-Romagna region and feature valuable characteristics such as their sweetness, firmness and aroma. Researchers combine these advantages with those of some American varieties, which have excellent aesthetic qualities such as their large size, appearance and bright color. By now, the sweet cherries of the University of Bologna are famous all over the world. They are widely available on the market and serve as an example of how research can have a tangible impact beyond the academic environment. In Chile, the cherries from the Sweet series have found fertile ground to the point that local producers were taken by surprise by their performance. The soil and climate conditions in Chile include more light on the cherry orchards and a significant temperature variation between day and night, fostering the development of the fruit's quality parameters. The cherries are richer in nutrients, resulting in increased sugar levels, while the sudden changes in temperature improve their firmness. At Ana Chile, we often travel abroad to go and see new varieties. With regard to the sweet series, we have understood their potential, but we're also aware that Chile has very different conditions. So this is why, when we introduced the varieties of the sweet series, we started by doing tests in various regions of Chile and went on testing them together with producers. We realized that the firmness these varieties had and the Brix they reached were much higher than what we observed in Spain or in Italy. Moreover, we also had the chance to carry out a post-harvest analysis in order to simulate sea freight, and the results we obtained, as for the sweet series, were outstanding. Therefore, these varieties were introduced commercially in 2019. This means that there are already commercial cherry orchards. For example, with regard to Sweet Ariana, 1,200,000 trees belonging to this variety have been planted. As for Sweet Lawrence and Sweet Gabriel, 134,000 have been planted for the former and 68,000 for the latter. So we already have a larger number of producers who are going to have a significant volume of cherries between now and 2026. Another interesting feature of these varieties is the Brix they reach, which is typically much higher than the Brix that traditional varieties have. We are talking about a Brix that's very close to 20 and a high soluble solids content. When picking early cherries in particular, the Brix value matches that of other varieties such as Royal Dawn or Centina, with the best cherries having a Brix value of up to 18, while the average is between 15 and 17. Therefore, we want to win over consumers and ensure they have access to a much firmer, much crunchier and very sweet cherry. This is the advantage that the cherries of the sweet series have compared to traditional varieties. These varieties from the sweet series of the University of Bologna have proved to be very interesting in terms of their post-harvest life. We have stored the Sweet Ariana variety for more than 30 days, 40 days, almost 60 days even, and obtained excellent results. It stays very firm, close to almost 90 Durafil, and this is really interesting. Even for the Sweet Gabriel and Sweet Lawrence varieties, firmness is still above 80, which is a significant advantage for our industry, as sea freight is used for exports and transport takes several days. So this is undoubtedly a really positive benefit for the Chilean cherry supply chain. As we have seen in the initial overview, Chilean cherries are essentially bound for overseas markets. More than 90% of the production is exported, meaning that transport is by sea and may take between 30 days for closer destinations and 45 for further locations. China is the target market. As a customer, it is very demanding and requires precise quality standards. Quality is created in the field and is protected in the post-harvest stage. Bear in mind that we are talking about a fruit that is basically picked right when it is ripe for consumption. What does it mean? It means that cherries have a very short shelf life left when it's harvest time. So we have to implement a series of technologies to extend their shelf life so that we get the amount of time we need, particularly during transport. The Chinese market is a very interesting market because it's demanding in terms of quality, but at the same time it pays very well for quality and makes a clear distinction between products belonging to different quality ranges. Therefore, if producers work well, if they value quality and make a careful selection of the products, they'll see that this target market is willing to pay a higher price for their work for that category. So it is important to know the quality parameters and, of course, understand that each reference market has its own, More specifically, when opening the cases, the Chinese market wants uniform cherries. The color needs to be uniform, and this is something that is obtained during the post-harvest stage, through the packaging system, on the sorting lines, where we need to make the color as uniform as possible. As you know, the cherries that a tree produces may have a diverse range of colors, and therefore it is essential to set the right harvest window and then sort the cherries according to their color in the sorting line. After that, once we are displaying a uniform color, the next quality parameter is the firmness. The Chinese market is very demanding when it comes to texture, and they touch the cherries to check that they are firm and not mushy. Mushy cherries are discarded immediately upon product acceptance, when the commercial quality of the cherries is assessed. Therefore, we are aware that firmness is a key parameter that needs to be checked when it's harvest time. Then, the second relevant parameter is sweetness, which is given by the soluble solids content. This is an indicator of consumer acceptability and repeat purchase, and it follows that there is a minimum threshold. Ideally, cherries with a soluble solids content below 16% are not accepted. It is preferable to have about 17 or 18%. Another important aspect regarding consumer acceptability on the Chinese market is acidity. Unlike the requirements of other countries, mainly European countries, the Chinese market does not like excessively sour cherries. To give you an idea, the acidity of the varieties that we typically harvest is usually 1%. During the post-harvest stage, acidity decreases and you can reach acidity levels of 0.7 or 0.8%. Therefore, some varieties have low acidity at harvest time, and this is a fundamental genetic factor that has to be identified based on the cultivars. For example, the Santina cherry is a low-acid variety, which means it features one of the key characteristics for the Chinese market. It is the first variety that we use modified atmosphere packaging for in order to ship it by sea. So the visual quality is an extremely relevant parameter. Another important aspect for the market is the outer appearance of the cherry, the visual quality of the product, including the pedicel, which is also key. The color of the pedicel is a key indicator of the freshness of the cherries, so it is important to have a green pedicel. If this is not the case, the market and consumers will immediately associate it with an old product, which has been stored for too long and will therefore have a limited shelf life. Therefore, the quality of the color of the pedicel is essential, and while it is a factor that also depends on varietal characteristics, post-harvest plays a fundamental role in maintaining its color and obviously in avoiding dehydration, which is something that starts from that tissue. Another fundamental parameter to evaluate the quality of a cherry is its size. Consumers like larger sized cherries and markets pay well for them. Getting larger sized cherries calls for the right varietal selection and good management of the cherry orchard. This has a double advantage for producers. With the same harvested volume, production costs are reduced while net earnings increase. Quality is something that is created. It is created throughout the process on the tree. And why is that? Because it is a fruit that we harvest when it is basically ripe for consumption. As a result, we are left with a very limited storage time. Therefore, the appearance of signs of physiological deterioration takes place when the cherries are on the tree. And for the most part, the softening also takes place on the tree. You obtain the parameters that I have mentioned earlier. The soluble solids content is developed when the cherries are on the tree, and it is only obtained until harvest time. After that, the soluble solids content no longer increases. This means that the sugar levels that I have mentioned must be reached before cherries are harvested. From a physiological point of view, this is why the leaf-to-fruit ratio that we obtain in our cherry orchard is so important in terms of the quality of the final product. If the crop load of the tree is excessive, that excess will translate to a fruit with little sugar and to a fruit that develops its color with greater difficulty and may decay internally in the form of pulp softening on the tree before harvest. Harvest time is a key stage to ensure quality cherries. In order to determine when it is exactly, you need to rely on the color of the fruit. While in Europe we're used to picking cherries later in time, Chile adopts a different strategy, precisely for the extended duration of transport. Cherries have a good indicator to determine when harvest time is, which is color, precisely the color of the skin. You need to understand how to ensure the skin reaches a certain color though. The color of the skin that we see is a red color of lighter or darker shades. It is therefore a color which comes in various degrees of intensity. It is a specific pigment, anthocyanin. So this pigment is produced on the tree, and the cherry's final growth phase is when the accumulation and synthesis of these pigments take place, resulting in a much greater concentration. And therefore, the ripening process must be followed in relation to the intensity of that color. Consequently, as you can see here, we have color charts that show the exact color for the different varieties. So, for example, we have a 3.5 color, which is a mahogany red, the standard color that the main varieties of cherries have. This is always the desired color. That being said, not all varieties reach this color and the firmness we need for the market. So, on a general level, we tend to harvest the vast majority of varieties when their color is between 3 and 3.5. In the case of Santina, we lean towards a color like this, which is a characteristic, interesting and beautiful color, and is also the emblem of this variety. As for Lapins, Lapins is a very demanding variety in terms of pulp firmness and very sensitive to high summer temperatures. Therefore, we start to harvest it when the color is 3. Then, moving to darker varieties such as the Regina variety, we get from color 3.5 to color 4, while keeping in mind that when the color of a cherry is 4, that is a fairly overripe product. So the ideal color would be 3.5, and we set limits in order to avoid reaching color 4, which is color 3.8. In other words, we accept a certain amount of 3.8, but we do not accept color 4. What happens if we start to harvest the Regina variety at a more advanced stage of ripeness? Well, because transport for this variety lasts 35 or 40 days, a color pointing to an advanced stage of ripeness will lead to internal browning of the pulp, and the internal browning ruins the flavor of the cherry. So as you can imagine, this may be problematic when selling this variety. The degree of ripeness is essential to determine how the harvest is carried out in a cherry orchard and what the harvest window is. Basing the harvest on soluble solids is wrong, because waiting for the soluble solids content means that you are likely going to get internally overripe cherries, even if the color is the right one. The best cherry orchards are those where harvest time coincides with the moment when the color of the cherries matches the previously established color of the variety, and when the concentration of soluble solids is the highest. In our case, considering that transport takes a long time, the sign pointing to the correct ripeness is the color, and at the same time, we aim for the highest percentage of sugar. If this is not reached, it points to a poor job being done in the orchard, and you won't reach it by delaying the harvest. If you do that, you're going to have an even more difficult time, because cherries are going to cause many issues during the post-harvest stage. You would end up having a poor quality product with signs of reduced firmness and may potentially even rot. When harvesting, it is important to be careful about mechanical damage. This often goes unnoticed at first and only becomes visible on the cherries once they have been shipped to their destination, leading to batch recall. To correctly pick cherries, you need the right technique and extra care. The origin of significant mechanical damage can be traced back to the harvest. Therefore, it is fundamental to teach cherry pickers how to harvest fruit. The right systems and tools are required for the harvest. Cherry pickers need to have their hands free and avoid holding too many cherries at a time, and this causes mechanical damage. Mechanical damage is not visible when sorting takes place in the line, but rather after the cherries have been harvested. This is why it is necessary to teach cherry pickers what holding cherries in their hands entails. It entails cherries suffering damage that will only become visible later on during the post-harvest stage. Then, on top of teaching that cherries need to be picked individually and placed in a basket, it is important to explain how to pick them from the tree. So the right way is upwards. You have to make an upward movement in order to pick each fruit individually. You cannot pull the cherries, because if you do that, that movement, that force, damages the cherries, and the damage will not be visible. So it is of utmost importance to ensure that the pickers are doing an upward movement when picking the cherries, and then they are placing them one by one in the container they are using for the harvest. Then another fundamental step from the mechanical damage point of view is the transport towards the warehouse. Before the products are brought to the plant, it is necessary to ensure the right conditions are met for this stage. This originates from the close proximity between the cherries and the pedicels, which may leave marks on the fruit, so it needs to be avoided at all costs. Then another important aspect is the line, where mechanical damage appears, so it is necessary to keep the line monitor and check to make sure that there are no signs of damage of the products. From a quality point of view, the fundamental requirement of the market obviously refers to the visual aspect that you get when looking at the cherries in the cases, that is to say, a uniform color. This is why all the work that is done in the post-harvest stage to sort the cherries according to their color is essential. Then, once a uniform color is achieved in each case, there is a further high standard to be ensured for the Chinese market, namely firmness. Mushy cherries are not accepted, so the first thing they do is feel the fruit to the touch. It follows that the packaging we use is manufactured precisely to check the firmness of the fruit. Therefore, the cherries must be firm, they must be resistant and must not yield to the touch. So, these are the parameters that we must check during harvest. The second quality aspect is consumer repeat purchase, and it is something that is obtained thanks to the soluble solids content and acidity. The Chinese market is extremely demanding when it comes to the sugar levels that cherries must have. So any soluble solids content lower than 16% is not accepted. The ideal soluble solids content should be greater than 18%. The flavor of a cherry is given by the combination of soluble solids and acidity. For the Chinese market, the acidity must be low, of course, and this basically depends on the varieties. For example, the Santina cherry is a low-acid variety. In light of this, it is highly accepted as a variety at the time of consumption because it is just the perfect combination of low acidity, obviously, and sugar levels above 17%, or even better, higher than 18%. Once the cherries are picked, they are delivered to the processing plant, where sorting, preparation and packaging technologies come into play. Post-harvest is a stage that we are going to expand on during a dedicated video lesson. Speaking of our upcoming episodes, make sure you don't miss out on the exclusive preview of the latest trends of the fruit and vegetable industry that will be in the limelight in several industry-specific halls of Macfrut 2024 in May. In the meantime, you can keep up with Macfrut and get real-time updates. As always, you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you again next time!